Ну, если хочешь, по 15.
Игорь Николаевич. Потерялся, да? Я потому что не вижу свет в глаза. Да, давайте. Доброе утро, уважаемые коллеги.
Good morning, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen.
Сегодня уже 23-й раз
Today is the 23rd
на День Балтийского моря. В этом году тема нашего заседания — устойчивое управление морскими регионами как инструмент сохранения морской среды. И собрались мы с вами не в самое простое время. Мы знаем, что страны Хелком проигнорировали этот день, в котором традиционно принимали участие, но от этого День Балтийского моря не перестает быть праздником для всех нас, собравшихся в этом здании, и как событие для всех, для нас, научное, практическое, организационное. И мы проводим его в международном формате, потому что к нам присоединились наши коллеги из других стран мира. К нам присоединяются Китайская Народная Республика, Мьянма, Вьетнам, все те, кому не безразлична судьба морской среды. В очередной раз мы проводим мероприятие в гибридном формате, уже в 3-й раз. С одной стороны, пандемия сильно ударила по конгрессной деятельности, с другой стороны, открыла для нас новые возможности в плане участия и расширения.
industry. However, it opened new avenues to broaden our borders. Through online, we can invite speakers from abroad. And last year, for the Baltic Sea Day environment of the big city, over 7,500 participants attended. That's a huge audience. So this year, as of today, 3,000 participants have already registered, both offline and online participants, during the 3 days of our event. This year, we planned 9 sub-activities as part of the Baltic Sea Day Forum. So the forum runs for 3 days. First, the maritime spatial planning, a step forward. That's a traditional roundtable. We run it at day 1 in D1 room. So we have regions invited from near sea areas, because we have a diverse experience. We want to learn the best practices, best approaches, new technologies. That's the goal of the roundtable. maritime and nearshore areas experience. That's a new topic, and we hope it will be in high demand due to the development of marine tourism and developmental potential of near-shore regions, and these regions are very specific when it comes to the development. Contemporary methods of environmental status check of maritime regions, that's during the import substitution days, that's an important thing. We want to learn about the new tools that are being produced and used. We need to discuss whether there is a demand for the methods or instrumental pool needed for researchers. So we want to raise these questions with our industry partners. So response and prevention of oil spills, that's an important issue for countries that extract hydrocarbon resources, and Russia is one of them. We do it in the aquifer in our country. So monitoring of the environmental status, that's again a very acute challenge, especially lately. The science has studied in depth all these challenges, and now we see the great scope of the challenge globally. So we combine two events, the environmental challenges of a big city. So environmental agenda as dictated by the climatic change and how Russia adapts to it. The challenges and best practices of marine regions. Everyone knows that about a week ago, our Prime Minister, Mr. Mishustin, signed the second plan document with documents with goals set by 2025, and till 2028, we have the roadmap. Science and practice to resolve challenges to reduce water body pollutions at agriculture. Again, that's a traditional topic for Baltic Sea Days events because sea does impact sometimes catastrophically. It is impacted by agriculture. We must discuss these challenges together. And traditionally, traditional meeting of Russian National Subcommittee is part of this event, and it is due on March the 22nd. That's the agenda in the nutshell for the 3 days, and I hope that you get new knowledge, new context during this Baltic Sea Day event named after Leonid Korovin. And now the welcome address opportunity is given to the representative of the St. Petersburg government, Mr. Petrov, the first deputy of the staff manager in the Governor Office of St. Petersburg. Dear friends, dear colleagues, I'm greatly honored to be part of this excellent event. Allow me to welcome you on behalf of the St. Petersburg administration and on behalf of the governor, vice governor, the head of the staff of the Governor Office, Mr. Pikalov. I'll read his welcome word. Dear friends and colleagues, I'm happy to welcome the participants and guests and organizers of the 23rd international event, the Baltic Sea Day. It's a forum which is unique. It is a communication platform where sectoral participants, industry experts can discuss the contemporary condition of the sea. It's an opportunity to share practices and best approaches to answer the challenges, common challenges, and achieving the sustainability of the region. St. Petersburg is the biggest city located in the Baltic Sea basin. Therefore, we take legislative and practical steps to restore the Baltic Sea basin and keeping it in balance. And also Russia, and St. Petersburg in particular, makes its international contribution. The 23rd day of the Baltic Sea Day will be necessary to ensure that regions cooperate and cooperate mutually, profitably to achieve common results. I wish you fruitful work. Thank you. Thank you, Mikhail Viktorovich. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Protection of the Russian Federation is represented by Natalia Tretyakova, the Department of International Cooperation and Climate Change. The welcome word from the Ministry of Natural Resources. Good morning, dear colleagues and guests. I will read the welcome address on behalf of the Director of the International Cooperation and Climatic Change Department. Dear colleagues, high guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome the participants of the 23rd International Forum Baltic Sea Day on behalf of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment of the Russian Federation. Russia enjoys the longest maritime border globally. It is 61,000 kilometers and it is washed by 13 countries. Russia is part of international conventions on protection maritime environment in the Baltic Sea, the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, the northwestern part of the Pacific Ocean and the Arctic Ocean. Respectively, these are Helsinki, Bucharest, Tehran conventions, and others, and Arctic Council. Today is the World Water Resources Day, and the Baltic Sea Day Forum is an open platform, and it allows that opportunity to discuss the contemporary condition of the environmental situation in Russian Federation seas, and it allows experts to cooperate. So as part of the Baltic Sea Day, we will pay a special focus on the development of specially protected areas in order to protect biodiversity in seas. We also consider the implementation of maritime spatial planning, development of norm-setting documents, etc., including plastic garbage in water bodies. St. Petersburg is the host and also a major research center. Therefore, this platform is in fact in high demand among Russian researchers. The experience allows us to move from documents to practical steps using contemporary technologies and digitalization. I'm positive that Baltic Sea Day Forum will help to enhance our audience using the new formats and once again will confirm that nature knows no borders and nationalities. Thank you. Thank you, Natalia Borisovna. You gave a very important statement, and the ministry, as usual, provides very precise wording that later will be discussed, all these themes, at the event. The Baltic Sea Day event is part of the calendar of the Maritime Collegium in the Arctic Council of the Russian Federation, and I will invite the head of the Committee on Environmental Protection, Nature Use, and Environmental Safety for welcome address on behalf of the Maritime Collegium. Good morning, dear colleagues. I'm happy to welcome everyone at this forum. The Committee of Nature Use in St. Petersburg is an important consolidating factor for the research community. We assure the format where research agreements are made. We share experiences with other regions, and we're happy to see representatives of Russian constituencies in the audience. However, allow me to read the welcome address of the responsible Secretary of the Maritime Collegium of the Russian Federation, Mr. Antipin, to the participants and organizers of the 23rd Environmental Forum, the Baltic Sea Day. Dear friends, on behalf of the Maritime Collegium under the auspices of the Russian government, we welcome all the participants of the 23rd International Environmental Forum. In July 2021, a document was signed by the President of the Russian Federation, which determines the activities of the Maritime Collegium. So, and the Maritime Doctrine was signed up, and we ensure that it is implemented. And it ensures that Russia has the national maritime policy and prepares drafts for the international agreements. We assure that maritime biological systems are kept and in balance, and we make preventive measures. We expect to get the knowledge of the monitoring results, the best practices in maritime spatial planning. All of it is faced at comprehensive use of maritime resources in order to assure sustainable development of the entire country and its near water regions. Thank you. And now, personally, I would like to add some words. I will support Mr. Serebritsky. Indeed, the agenda is very dense. There are some pressing challenges that we do address day to day, and here I mean the Committee of Natural Resource Use. St. Petersburg has water installations at the Neva River and at the Baltic Sea. So we run certain experiments in the city, about 4 of them. However, we have a simple statistics. We have 17 aquifers with over 9,000 hectares, the total area. And we keep statistics along the Gulf of Finland border. And our experts are very knowledgeable, and hopefully that our experts and NGOs will provide certain routes how to deal with the challenges, and we will satisfy our mutually beneficial interests. Thank you, Alexander Viktorovich. As I announced, our event keeps the international touch, and therefore we are deeply thankful to foreign participants of our event and the welcoming words on the Myanmar Republic online. We will have the Admiral speaking team, Aung San, the Deputy Prime Minister in the Ministry of Transportation and Communication.
Good morning, Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to deliver the welcome address in this 23rd International Environmental Forum, Baltic Sea Day. I hereby extend my great thanks to Alexandra Karaman, Head of the Committee for Nature Use, Environmental Protection, and Ecological Safety for inviting me this forum, and also special thanks to member of the government of St. Petersburg, Chairman Yevgeny Grigoris, and Deputy Chairman Virashat Salet Karganov of the Committee for External Relations, St. Petersburg government, all speakers and organizers for holding this important event successfully. The ocean is an essential resource that supports countless human activities such as shipping, fishing, energy production, tourism, and recreation. However, These activities can also have substantial negative impacts on marine ecosystem and biodiversity. To balance the needs of different ocean users and management objectives, marine spatial planning provides an integrated multi-sectoral collaborative process to analyze and allocate human activities in marine environments. Most of the country, including our country, Myanmar, use marine spatial planning process to better plan and ultimately manage their marine space. Like any other country in the world, Myanmar conserves its marine environment, biodiversity, and ecosystems through establishment of protected areas. It also focuses on mitigating climate change, aligned with the international regulations and commitments. To effectively manage and protect the seas, we need to understand their current state and how they are changing over time. It is required to use modern technologies such as remote sensing, acoustic surveys, oceanographic surveys, underwater cameras, and DNA analytics that can provide accurate and comprehensive data on the physical, chemical, and biological properties of the seas. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, international conventions such as MARPOL and OPRC conventions, anti-fouling and ballast water management conventions establish a regulatory framework addressing environmental conservation, marine pollution, and protecting our oceans and marine life. However, their effectiveness depends on the implementation and enforcement of the provision by a state. It is our shared responsibility to work together and to preserve our marine environment. As you all are aware, marine pollution is a global issue that requires a mechanism of coordinated international and regional response to protect our oceans and marine life. While pollution may pose a significant impact on marine ecosystem and livelihood, therefore, preventive measures are crucial to avoid marine incidents and preparedness for response to oil pollution. One of the critical measures to eliminate marine pollution incidents and oil spill is the strict enforcement of stipulated laws and regulations. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is also one of the greatest challenges facing humanity today. It is posing a threat to our planet. Natural disasters such as floods, droughts, landslides, rising temperature, ocean acidification, sea level rise, and environmental pollutions are unprecedentedly increasing and contribute a wide range of environmental impacts and ecological challenges. For the implementation of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Kyoto Protocol, and the Paris Agreement, parties are required to establish nationally determined contribution NDCs. Aligned with Myanmar's Sustainable Development Plan, we have adopted our NDC with a strategic vision to transform the country into the climate resilient, low carbon society that is sustainable, prosperous, and inclusive for the well-being of present and future generations. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I truly believe this forum will provide the opportunity for all of us to acquire the knowledge and experience of the experts and the exchange of information, ideas, and best practices, and create networks and partnerships. Last but not least, I would like to express my appreciations to all participants and organizers for your efforts in making this forum a reality. Your dedication and commitment to environmental conservation are inspiring, and I believe that your contribution to this forum will help to create a better future for our planet. Thank you.
Большое спасибо, господин.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tim Kamsan. And I'm really very pleased. It's now clear that the topics pronounced at the forum fully coincide with the ideas of our colleagues from yes, marine planning as an element of government planning is very important. Preservation of biodiversity using the modern method in assessment of the seas and oceans, and scientific approach at solution of environmental problems. Yes, we've heard all that from Mr. Admiral, and that's what our experts in environment protection believe is a cornerstone of their work. Thank you. We'll wait for your colleagues' presentations at our conferences and round tables, and hope you will join our forum next year in the year 24, which will traditionally take place in March of the year 24 in St. Petersburg. Thank you. That's not all yet with the greetings. Also, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we have a permanent participant who is supporting our forum on behalf of the Ministry, Deputy Director of Department of European Cooperation, Mr. Igor Kaperin. Greetings from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Good day, dear participants, dear friends of the Baltic Sea. Well, I'm a many-year participant. Thus, I'm very pleased to read the speech of Igor Vershinin, our minister, to the participants and guests of the 23rd International Environmental Forum, Days of the Baltic Sea. I greet the organizers and participants of the forum, which recommended itself to be a very good site for discussion of the most important issues on nature protection. Russian Federation has a huge marine shore, thus it's an active champion for preservation of the seas and oceans, and we participate in the international cooperation in this field. Oceans are important for prosperity of states, and the use of the marine and water resources should be substantial. Substantial management of marine regions is comprehensive and includes optimal combination of usage of the marine spaces and preservation. Everything, including spatial planning, should be done in line with the international rules. First of all, the UN Convention on Marine Law of the year 82 that regulates all the activities at sea. The concept of marine spatial planning is widespread globally. It's used by dozens of states as the tool for zone planning of their own water areas. In Russia, this approach is yet being formed. We're planning to develop the necessary rules and regulations for that. To make a legal basis of importance is the tool of specially protected areas. Special modes of protection are organized there if these areas are of a special cultural, natural, recreational, or scientific value. At international level, we see that the concept is getting global, and it tends to be international, even outside the regions of state jurisdiction. But thus there may be a complete banning of the activities, like in Convention of the year 84. To our mind, the policy in this area, especially when we talk about closing of important areas by the protected areas, should be determined both by the tasks and by the development. The decisions should be substantiated and scientifically based, not to have long-term negative consequences. Equal access to water, not letting to contaminate big water areas, preservation of marine biodiversity is one of the main tasks of the nature protective activities of the international world. For that, certain efforts should be organized internationally with the consideration of all the factors. International meetings do incentivize such efforts, including the meeting like yours, including your forum. And this forum is making its input in sustainable development and providing a favorable environment for human habitat. That's it. Sergei Vershinin, March 22 of the year 23. I'm one of the participants, so let me congratulate you with the beginning of this forum. This year it has the motto, different seas and water areas are coming as the guests of St. Petersburg. Yes, truly, the organization of marine matters is not yet very well balanced. We have good branch structures, but the general coordination needs some improvement. Some additional efforts are to be made, hence we expect interesting ideas and suggestions and discussions at this forum. I wish you all the best. Thank you, Igor. Dear colleagues, that's it with the greetings. Let us thank those who greeted our forum. And let me invite the speakers to the podium. You're welcome to take your seats. While people are taking their seats, dear colleagues, the moderators of today's event from the Ministry of Nature Resources and Ministry of Environment of the Russian Federation, that's Natalia Tretiakova, and from the government of St. Petersburg on the Committee on Nature Use and Environment Protection, it's me, Ivan Serebritsky. I'm the deputy chair of the committee. Natalia, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Ivan. Please take your seats next to your name tags. Dear members of the plenary meeting, if everyone is ready, let's begin. I'll begin with a short introduction. I believe you all are familiar with the participants of our plenary session. As it was mentioned several times, in the year 23, the main topic of the Days of the Baltic Sea is modern reality and environment goals of the seas. Today, the Day of the Baltic Sea is a site for discussion of the condition of the seas in Russia, a possibility of cooperation between the branches and sharing experience in resolution of environmental problems, so that we achieve sustainable management of marine regions. So the topic of this plenary region is the sustainable management of marine region as the tool for preservation of a marine environment. This is important so that we understand and do share best practices in the field, both in Russia and abroad. We should make an input in item 14 of the agenda of the UN on sustainable development goals. Let me also mention that in the year 17, at a different forum, also Marine Forum, the Days of the Caspian Sea, there were the participants of the Helsinki and the Black Sea Commission. The same format shall be held in St. Petersburg. As it was mentioned, one may participate both personally and online. That broadens our format. However, the Day of the Baltic Sea, that was inspired and organized once by Leonid Korovin, yet in the year 1999. Thus, it will take place in St. Petersburg with participation of representatives of the other marine regions of the world. We'll begin with familiarizing with the tasks, the information. So there will be the presentations of the representatives of the Framework Convention on Marine Protection, the so-called Tehran Convention for Protection of the Caspian Sea, Maher Aliyev and Mr. Mateusz Benko. And, well, the delegated Tatiana Butylina to make a presentation for the. She is representing the national office of the Tehran Convention.
Добрый день, дорогие коллеги.
Good day, dear colleagues.
Было представлено. Я представляю.
I represent the national office of the Tehran Convention, based in the Center of International Projects. It was started since its foundation. The Framework Convention, Tehran Convention, has long history that starts in the 1990s.
В рамках региональной программы по охране морей ЮНЕПа.
Well, the issue of that's when the issue of preservation of the Caspian Sea became very acute. Caspian Sea is a unique water reservoir, and it's very much impacted by people, and it has rather significant deviations of its level. This impacted the biodiversity of the Caspian Sea. It's very productive, and it's a unique biological resource. Starting from 1990s, UNEP conducted a number of activities for the protection of the coastal area of the Caspian Sea. All the Caspian countries participated in it. The year 94, that was the beginning of the Tehran Convention. During the meeting on climate changes related to the Caspian Sea, the Caspian states representatives applied to UNEP with the request to start the development of a legal document that will determine the condition and of the Caspian Sea and the measures for its protection. That was the initial point. The Special features of Tehran Convention is that negotiations were conducted within international projects under the aegida of UNEP, PRAON, Global Environmental Fund. And the result was the signing of the Tehran Convention 20 years ago in the year 2003. The convention came into force in the year 2006, and according to our chair, that's when Iran joined, and that became the so-called Day of the Caspian Sea that the Caspian states celebrate annually in their country and internationally. Most frequently, all the 5 Caspian Seas, like in the years 17 and 19, are celebrated. They gathered together to celebrate that day. The convention, in its beginning, determined all the positions and the main goals that determined their activity.
They are to make sure that there is no pollution, no land source pollution, minimization of threats, preserving of biological resources, and development of international cooperation as guided by international rules in order to achieve the preservation of maritime and environment of coastal areas in the Caspian Sea. So the key idea is to recognize the environmental wholeness or entirety of the biological environment in the Caspian Sea. That was, so to say, the red thread which goes through the entire Tehran Convention. So another principal idea of this convention and its protocol is the main objective to be sustainable in the use of biological resources. The Tehran Convention and its protocols are, so to say, framework documents. Therefore, 4 key ideas are treated in detail in the protocols. Therefore, the convention itself and all its addendums, as they are listed on the screen, they were signed at different times. However, they are in use to enhance the protection activities of the maritime and coastal environment in the Caspian Sea. Again, the Sustainable Development Goal, when it comes to the Tehran Convention, it determines as an integral part. It determines as the integral part in the Moscow Protocol the following thing: the sustainable development of coastal areas in the Caspian Sea is treated with the comprehensive approach towards the coastal area development. The Moscow Protocol of the Tehran Convention provides the definition of the coastal area. This is the land strip that borders on the water and affected by the sea of the level and its fluctuation, because it is next to the unique water body. At the national level, we have the definition in specific articles in the Ashgabat Protocol treating the preservation of biodiversity. So at the national level, we have the definition and approaches for countries how to manage coastal areas. It is to be done by adopting at the national level, and if necessary, regional strategies that shape action plans. The key idea of the action plan is to have a comprehensive approach. including sustainable and rational use of bioresources and biodiversity preservation. This document also determines what the sustainable use is. The Ashgabat Protocol says it means sustainable use is as it is determined in the Global Convention. The use biodiversity components in a way and at a speed that long-term will not deplete biological diversity, thus preserving the capacity to satisfy future generation needs. Article 15, in fact, summarizes sustainable management and sustainable use. So, as for the management, it has the definition managing the land that is affected by the near sea, and it shall be done through the strategy, and the strategy must consider the specifics of the Caspian Sea region and by adapting the human activity to the changing environmental conditions and ensuring that we understand the commercial importance of the resource and its biodiversity. In fact, the Tehran Convention is based on Rio 92 that determines the comprehensive management approaches for coastal areas, and also it shaped the definition of sustainable development which further continued to develop, and then I gave other milestones related to the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations that was adopted and came into force in 2016. In reality, the Tehran Convention is a framework document, but in fact it determines all major requirements and approaches to the comprehensive and sustainable management. This region has the geopolitical significance quite high, and therefore this document is quite definitive. Let me briefly explain certain items in this convention. As I said, it is a framework document, but at the same time, it determines the minimization or how to minimize the spills, the pollution. Tatiana, unfortunately, have only 1 minute left. Well, pollution is determined as vessel-sourced, land-sourced, etc. The Tehran Convention determines approaches and cooperations with other conventions, in particular global conventions, regional, as already mentioned here, like the Helsinki Convention, etc. Furthering of cooperation is one of the main ideas in the Tehran Convention. And that's exactly the theme of our today's event. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tatiana Pavlovna. Indeed, the Tehran Convention, the Caspian Sea region are very important and effective tools for the regions. All countries, Russia including, are strongly focused on this region. Everyone knows that the Caspian Sea is a venue for Caspian summits where presidents of near-Caspian countries convene. Therefore, we definitely follow with great attention how this region develops along different lines. Now, let us move on to a different region. The Arctic Ocean, as you know, is quite far from the Baltic Sea. Therefore, the Arctic Council presentation will be online. I will ask Nikolai Shabalin. We don't see you at the moment, but we know that you are a special envoy on maritime activities at the Arctic Ocean. So, and you will brief us on the environmental monitoring of the Northern Sea route as an instrument for environmental protection activities planning. Nikolai, can you hear us? I was just informed about a technical challenge. So we will try to get to even further district, the Far East. It's even more away, far away from the Baltic Sea, and I ask Anatoly Nikolaevich Kachur to brief us on the activities on protection, management, and development of marine and coastal environmental region in the northwestern part of the Pacific Ocean. That is part of UNEP activities. We can see you, great, and we welcome you. We can see, but we cannot hear you. Anatoly Nikolaevich, we cannot hear you, but we can see you perfectly well. Still, we cannot hear you. Now we can. Great. Perfect. My warmest greetings from the Pacific Ocean coast. I wanted to show the maritime presentation about our action plan.
Да. О плане действия по защите, управлению и развитию морской прибрежной среды.
It will be about our action plan for the development of maritime and coastal areas in the northwest part of the Pacific Ocean. I cannot see my presentation. Well, I will be reading it to you then. So this action plan was adopted in December '94 as part of the regional activities in the United Nations. The main idea was rational use of coastal and maritime areas to get maximal long-term profits for the local population. Unfortunately, my presentation is not up. Currently, members at NOPAP, the People's Republic of China, Japan, the South Korean Republic, and the Russian Federation. The Ministry of Russian Federation is represented in this cooperation, and the actual practical body is the Regional Project Center. We are a densely populated area with over 300 million people residing in this segment of the world, mostly at its coastal areas. Industries are well development, agriculture, and technologies. So we have this, therefore, human load on the regional. Transborder assessment done by UNEP in 2016 major maritime regions, the Japanese Sea and the southern Chinese Sea, in fact, has high indicators of anthropogenic impact because it is developed and it has about 65,000 maritime species registered. Once NOPAP was registered, we focused on 5 key action plan items to assess environmental area, to manage environmental information, to develop and apply ecological approaches to maritime planning and effective measures to support at different emergencies, mainly related to oil spills, and prevention of pollution. And of course, keeping up to date the database. The agency runs intergovernmental meetings. There is under this auspices, we have the Regional Research Center. It has 4 sub-centers. One in Beijing, about information about oil spills combat in the South Korea. The assessment of coastal areas center is in Japan, and pollution monitoring center, and later renamed the development on the comprehensive approaches for management in Vladivostok. So also we develop special projects like the regional action plan for combating maritime litter, for preserving biodiversity, and other projects on microplastic, etc., and other challenges. Key challenges, as we see for the region, are fragmental degradation of certain areas, the chemical pollution of ocean bed sediments, chemical pollution of waters due to emergencies. Unfortunately, this is the area with densely shipping activities. We consider how to remove all these pollution and fighting algae, and therefore increased hypoxia. So these are challenges very current to this region and countries bordering on the region. Another challenge, introduction of alien species. It changes the biodiversity specific to our coastal areas. And of course, pollution with marine litter, including plastic and microplastic. As I said, our center is 30 years old. Lately, from 2012 to 2017, we focused mainly on 5 areas: the comprehensive management of land and water aquifers, regular assessment of water environment, prevention of chemical pollution and dangerous pollutions, prevention alien species introduction, preserving biodiversity, and fighting climate change consequences. So we provide this support for the management in comprehensive way, water bodies, coastal areas, prevention, pollution on land and on sea, and protection biodiversity. These were areas for the last 5 years. Now, the regional center which monitors pollution, it's part, that's the Russian center, and it is governed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Natural Resources, and the Russian Academy of Science. It was set up in 1999 as part of the National Geography Institute. The key goal to coordinate activities to manage cooperation as part of the regional monitoring of the management of maritime environment and coordination of comprehensive management on river basins in the region. With the assistance of national experts from all participating countries, we prepared major reviews on the condition of maritime environment and monitoring, and reviews on major challenges in comprehensive management of coastal areas and river basins. Again, I do not see my presentation on the screen. It is not shared. Therefore, I cannot present this document to you visually. However, Lately, we focused a lot on comprehensive management of coastal areas and river basins. Step one was to consider different methodologies used in this region, and we tried to identify differences and challenges when it comes to the use of these methods, and we provided guidelines to governmental bodies to use the most efficient methodology for maritime spatial planning and river basin planning. Also, we considered risks in terms of management. We promoted best practices among experts, business community, municipal servants, etc. So we prepared major reviews, several of them. We distributed them. We also ran courses for civil servants, for managers. And with this, we get a huge helping hand from conventions and East Asia countries are participants, and they were so kind in helping us to run these courses.
One more thing which we should do, that is the study of the amount of plastic and microplastic in our region. That's a global problem. As you know, it exists in the Baltic Sea as well. We've just started this activity, and we focused our activities on, say, microplastic coming from the rivers, kinds of microplastic, and certain developments were made in our countries on the impact of microplastic on the representatives of marine fauna. This is also a very well-developed topic in Japan and South Korea. So we collect this info and we provide recommendations for the future activities. You have 1 minute left, Anatoly. Well, each country has its own maximum permitted concentrations. Each country has its own position, but there is no uniform approach and no uniform approach regarding the aims of environmental protection qualities. So we singled out 5 main issues in which we offer our suggestions: that eutrophication, hazardous and heavy metal contamination, marine litter, destruction of habitats and of ecosystem, a loss of biodiversity, and, as I've mentioned several times, invasive species or alien species that impact a lot the marine ecosystems. We regularly organize international campaigns for cleaning of the coastal area. I know same campaigns do take place in the Baltic and Caspian Sea. In our place, it's very popular, and it's conducted in all the countries of the area. In Russia, several times a year in different places from Kamchatka to the south of Primorye region, we organize this not only to clean the coast. It's next to impossible since the region is too big and the coastline is too long. We just train our school children and students to take care of the nature and to understand how contamination impacts the coastal flora and fauna. Thank you, Anatoly Nikolaevich. That's all with my presentation. Sorry, I couldn't switch it to present it on the screen. Thank you very much, Anatoly. Yes, sometimes we do have technical problems. However, thanks a lot. And the NOPAB director of the center of the activity of AMRAC within the NOPAP, Anatoly, explained us the activities in the northwest of the Pacific Ocean. He explained the objectives of the organization. It's similar to that in the Baltic region and in the other regions, though of course there are specific features. There are different countries participating, nature is different there, and organization of the activity differs as well. However, they are very active in environmental protection. You see, this activity is very widespread both in the Caspian region and in the Far East. I'd like to ask the organizers if the Arctic region representative managed to join us. Well, not yet. In that case, we'll switch to a different organization, also a very important one. That's the BRICS organization. As you know, this abbreviation is very popular nowadays, and that's the abbreviation that means the names of the 5 states: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And they meet at different levels and discuss quite a number of issues. They are also having summits with participation of the countries' presidents at there. They discuss most important issues. The latest took place in June of the year 22 in China, summit number 14. So now we'll be told about the green agenda of BRICS. Olga Bakhmet will do that. She may do it from her seat. Olga, the floor is yours. Thank you, Natalia. Distinguished forum participants, let me first of all greet you on behalf of the National Committee on Studies of BRICS, on research, and I'd like to familiarize you with the opportunities and priorities of BRICS agenda related to scientific research and, of course, for marine environment preservation. Natalia mentioned that the latest 14th summit took place last year in Beijing, and the summit developed a declaration, which is now the basic document, and I'd like to dwell on that in greater detail. I'll tell you about the priorities. Besides, BRICS countries at implementation of their plans do the Sustainable Development Goals agenda of the UN till the year 30. This is their basis, and it has 3 parts: environment, social, and ecology. And these and economic. This is always put together. Not a single focus is excluded. Also, the principles of the Framework Convention of the UN and the Paris Agreement used as basis regarding the climate change. At development of certain trends, we always consider the national special features of BRICS countries. We don't have one size that fits all. We develop not only the general rules, but always consider the special features of every member country. Besides the development of environmental issues, that is preservation of biodiversity, mitigation of environmental risks, we always consider the economy development as well, and in particular the international trade. So that's how we regard these issues from different points of view, and we are for the both the economy development and preservation of the environment. It has to come together. This balanced program is being developed and corrected on the way. One of the fields is the preservation of our climate and biodiversity. One more thing should be mentioned, that is cooperation in case of emergencies and catastrophes and mitigation of the risk of the force majeure nature events. Also, food security is important. BRICS countries produce about 1/3 of the global food. That is why the agriculture has to be activized and developed, and that's for the well-being of not only the BRICS countries, but of the whole world. We've developed the agenda in this field till the year 30, and it includes providing access to clean water. And we are looking for food security and low-carbon economy development. Thus, many items of the declaration are supporting the green development and low-carbon economy. Another priority nowadays, and it's important for financing of the project's bank breaks, that's green economy. Well, it's the leitmotif. The priority is the development of economy with simultaneous development of technologies and research dedicated to the preservation of the environment and support of biodiversity, and creation of technologies that would enable to cut down the greenhouse gas emissions, so that we could depot the carbon and cut down the greenhouse gas emissions. So we've created the strategy for economic development till the year 2025, and it's related to climate change issues and creating the conditions for implementation of technologies and practices that help reduction of greenhouse gases. We are popularizing the scientific knowledge. We inform the population about the risks and hazards and about the new technologies that could mitigate that. One more thing is waste management, which includes the closed cycle economy, but that's not the limit. We do this and much more, and there's plenty of cooperation in this field. Next is green tourism development, or ecotourism, as we frequently name it. It's not only within the BRICS countries. It's an opportunity to show people all over the world the objects of environmental tourism on the territory of BRICS countries. Our places to be shown to people from all over the world. We keep talking about marine research. Let me tell you a bit about the preservation of marine environment within the BRICS Union. First of all, we focus on preservation of biodiversity of the ocean and at the support of sustainable economic development and well-being of the coastal population. First of all, today we'll mention the flagship BRICS project, Science for the Ocean, that we want. That's the name of the project. It's carried out within the framework of the Decade of the Oceans announced by the United Nations Organization. Now we develop cooperation in the field of marine science and technologies. What tools do we have? That's creation of the platform for cooperation in different fields. These are common intergovernmental researches and that's also common scientific expeditions. This year in South Africa, there'll be the 5th meeting of BRICS working group on ocean and polar science and technologies. They unite both the ocean and polar research and at present, great attention of scientists is paid to the scientific cooperation in the Arctic region. Besides Russia, China and India are very active in this topic. They are for the more active development of marine transportation while preserving the environment and supporting the biodiversity and preservation of marine fauna and flora. In conclusion, I'd like to mention I'm the member of the Scientific Council of BRICS. I'm also the head of the Federal Research Center of Karelia. Let me invite all of you this year. We'll have the first regional conference on scientific research within BRICS. We are planning it for June approximately, and we'll invite the representatives of all the BRICS countries. They have already confirmed their participation. It will be a live discussion offline of our research and cooperation at BRICS. Thank you. Thank you very much, Olga. As you see, live socialization is really precious, more emotional, and more fruitful, I believe, than the online. However, we do not refuse the online and the technical achievements. So let me thank once again Olga for familiarizing us with the BRICS countries' activities. Environmental agenda, protection of the marine environment and of the environment in general is very popular in these countries. They do a lot, and it's always the agenda, included in the agenda of the meetings. Climate is also a global priority among the topics discussed by BRICS countries. So they are one more side with whom we cooperate, and we consider the results of their work. We continue to accumulate the info coming from all the regions to be able to understand the things globally. Arctic Council is yet on the way to join us. The Arctic Ocean is a bit too distant from St. Petersburg, didn't get any closer. That's why we'll start discussing other issues, that is the environment protection. And this topic is paid attention by the members of the parliament of different countries, including the Interparliamentary Assembly of CIS countries. Let me ask Natalia Amburtseva to tell us about the activities of the Secretariat of Interparliamentary Assembly of CIS countries. What do they do in the field of environment? Natalia is Secretary of the Permanent Commission of the Assembly on Agrarian Policy, Nature Resources and Environment. So she's really an expert in the topic. The floor is yours, Natalia. Thank you. Good day, dear forum participants. Let me first of all thank the organizers for giving me the floor. So my greetings from the Interparliamentary Assembly, the Committee on Ecology, Nature Resources, etc. This IPA exists for 30 years, and it's a respected international organization in the field of interparliamentary cooperation. It unites the parliaments of the CIS countries. Since CIS was created, The problems of environmental protection are a priority in the activity, and in the status of CIS it says that one of the fields of cooperation is common activities for nature protection, mutual assistance in this field, and mutual assistance in case of force majeure situations and environmental catastrophes. Already in 30th of December of the year 91, the CIS countries signed 3 protocols on the problems of environment. In one of the protocols, it was mentioned about the preservation of fish resources of the Caspian Sea that has already been mentioned today. The other protocol is specification of the list of activities for mitigation of the Chernobyl catastrophe consequences, and the third was on preservation of the Aral Sea. Main activity of IPA is aimed at harmonization of nature protective legislation and on solution of transboundary problems on CIS territory. They've adopted over 70 documents, including model codes and laws, recommendations, agreements, and projects of convention dedicated to environment and in nature protection. Preparation of these documents is done by the Permanent Committee of CIS on Nature Use and Environment. There is the model of forest water code. The code on balls and balls usage of CIS countries are aimed at harmonization of legislation of the countries in the field. In its activity, we pay attention to the issues of preservation of marine environment and management of marine regions. The Commission keeps making draft laws, and they created model documents, drafts dedicated to the solution of the problems of the Caspian Sea. Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan Republic participate.
Azerbaijan made an initiative, and certain conventions were taken on how to protect biological resources of the Caspian Sea. And the Ecological Committee developed this document under the government of the Russian Federation. And it was approved in 2005 at the CIS country meeting. So having these documents allows to make closer the legislative systems of the countries and improve the fishing capacity of commercial species and their input into the country economy. So one thing is to protect, but also the other thing is to manage water and biological resources of the Caspian Sea. So countries want to unify their approaches and regulation mechanisms when it comes to important commercial species. Model laws were adopted. Aquaculture law, the protection and reproduction of salmon and sturgeon species, and the model code of aquaculture companies for the countries. So this model law was adopted, and it sets unified approaches and regulations for aquaculture that is needed to satisfy a variety of human needs, taking into the account current and future generation needs. So we need to protect the base of the humans living at a specific territory. The model law on aquaculture prepares the same name law of the Russian, was the base for preparing the same law of the Russian Federation. Another law, preservation of salmon species and their reproduction and making products of these fishes. So in 2006 and 2008, these documents were adopted for salmon and sturgeon species. In addition to that, another challenge is that the circulation of their products is regulated by the law. This Committee on Agriculture and Fishing activities developed the federal draft laws based on these model laws. The model fishing code of the Russian Federation for CIS countries is the base for fishing, preservation of culture, and is geared to having the sustainable development of fisheries. Adopted, the law was in 2011. The Model Water Code for CIS countries was developed by the Committee of the Federal Assembly on Natural Resources and Protection. So it sets the norms for sustainable use of water bodies and water resources. The Codex details trans-border water bodies, parts of internal waterways, sea waters, and specially protected areas. Model water code became the way to improve national legislations. It was used by Armenia when it prepared its water code. The same was done by Belarus, Russia, Tajikistan, and Moldova, and Belarus. We plan to discuss certain documents April 14th this year. The new version of the model law on specially protected natural territories provides certain principles how to use approaches of the International Union on Nature Protection, and it covers landscape along other things. Specially protected areas law or code provides key tools that are necessary to improve regulation to ensure sustainable development and environmental safety and protection of landscape and biological diversity of our water heritage. Our plans. The committee wants to develop a new version of the water code for CIS countries and some other laws. There are laws that are applicable to maritime regions. To name a few, the rational use and protection of trans-border waters, then about pollution and wastes and removing or response to the accumulated damage. Colleagues, I hope that interparliamentary developed documents will be an input to improve national legislations. The use of these laws will improve our cooperation when it comes to maritime region management and protection. Interparliamentary Assembly of CIS countries is always open to dialogue on a huge variety of issues when it comes to legislation, educational bodies, experts, communities, organizations, and NGOs. Thank you. Thank you, Natalia Igorevna. It is evident that the environmental agenda, protection of marine environment, harmonization of laws and legal frameworks is an area of active activities, of active operations of the Interparliamentary Assembly. All participants, all actors make their input into maritime environment protection, into protection of environment in a wider sense. The more we know of different aspects of operations of actors in this respect, the more efficient we are in our activities. Let us move on, and I will give the floor to Alex Stanislav Shalom to brief us on the input. Mr. Shlomo will speak about Belarus' input onto the protection of the Baltic Sea. And let me mention that as part of the Helsinki Committee on the Baltic Sea environment protection, Belarus has the observer status. Therefore, participation of water basin countries is significant for the Baltic Sea. Alex Stanislavich, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. Rather good morning, dear organizers and participants. I'm happy to welcome you on behalf of the Foreign Ministry of Belarus, and let me congratulate the government of St. Petersburg for being the excellent host. Belarus is an integral part of the Baltic region in terms of geography, history, culture, and economy. 1,000 years ago, merchants of the Polotsk Dukery were actively trading, and they were using the Western Двина for the transfer of goods. Belarus was very active in preserving the Baltic Sea and the development of the Baltic region. So we've got the observer status in the Baltic Sea State Council and later in the Northern Dimension. It was interesting and useful to participate, especially in the Northern Dimension. We had cooperation with Northern Investment Bank, the European Investment Bank, EBRD, NEFCO, and SIDA, Swedish Agency for Development. Interreg region of Baltic Sea in between 2007 and 2013, Belarus was very active. We had international contacts. Belarus was always for open and mutually beneficial cooperation with neighbor countries, and environment is no exclusion. Over the previous decades, we signed and launched a number of interparliamentary and intersectoral agreements for the Baltic Sea, and it covers a variety of environmental fields, water resources, transborder flora and fauna preservation. So, and we had working groups achieving their goals at bilateral and multilateral platforms. We thought we were a member in a good and strong family of Baltic countries, but we've got the family divorce because our neighbor countries were short-sighted and openly unfriendly, and they sacrificed for the moment the interests of their populations and achievements of multi-year cooperation. So we thought that Baltic countries, Baltic republics, and Poland would be the most interested parties to constructively cooperate. But it may strange, paradoxically, but they stopped the cooperation and became key proponents for sanctions and other destructive measures. They started constructing fences at borders, and it stops natural animal migration and bring them at the edge of extinction. That's a threat. So Latvia, Lithuania, and Belarus had a program for transborder cooperation, also Poland, Belarus, and Ukraine. These formats functioned for many years, and it allowed dozens of, even hundreds of projects to be implemented, including environmental ones. we shall say that Belarus has no financing from the Global Environmental Fund for international technical support. There is no activity with Latvia for shared management of the Western Dvina Basin, and there are barriers for electric car development in Belarus. So our experts developed project activity experience. It will be in demand later when we start searching for new ways of cooperation between neighbor regions in Russia and Belarus. At the national level, we are a member in the Helsinki Convention of the European Economic Committee of the UN. So for protection and use of trans-border waterways and international waters. So we play a fair part. Potentially dangerous installations for waters, for rivers, they are removed outside of water-protected areas. So we introduced wastewater treatment facilities in Belarus, like in Brest, Vitebsk, Grodno, Baranovich, Slonim. However, some of them were not implemented, and some were. Western donors provide just some of funding, but most of it is provided by the state. We are part of a number of projects, comfort living and benevolent environment. Over the last years, 22 wastewater treatment facilities were introduced and launched into operation. 11 of them used international funding. 2 biogas complexes using the waste water sediments were launched, and mechanical treatment for the sediment of wastewaters. So we upgrade technically, we increase the efficiency of wastewater treatment facilities, and therefore reducing untreated water dumping into the transborder rivers, and therefore ultimately into the Baltic Sea. So we cooperate with the Russian Federation as part of our shared state. So we have monitoring systems, including transborder ones. We have an entire network of monitoring points at such rivers as the Western Dvina, Neman, and Western Bug. In fact, we keep the statistics, and starting in 2020, the A and A plus were for 72.4. In 22-21, it was 66% of water bodies with this ranking. So we provide good water into the Baltic Sea. So we jointly, over the 15 years, made efforts to reduce the so-called extraction of waters. So the Basel Convention regulates the transfer of dangerous wastes, and Ministry of Natural Resources controls this process. We use the Global Environmental Fund financing to implement 2 major projects with the total funding over $12 million. Once it's done, we remove the unconditional pesticides. We will destroy over 2,370 tons of dangerous wastes. Another field is to destroy resistant organic pollutant and other hazardous substances as part of the comprehensive activities in Gomel region. So we removed organic pollutants out of the intended volume of 920 tons. So we removed 830. So we have priority areas of cooperation with the countries. One of them is restoring the population of the European eel in Belarus. In 2007, the European Union introduced the export to export, which prohibits the export of the yield maggot into third countries. There were no cooperation in this field in better times, and therefore we will try to work on this issue solo. Belarus is committed to its international obligations, and we will continue to move forward mostly with the cooperation of our Russian partners. Thank you very much, Oleg Stanislavovich. Times are difficult, and our challenges are extraordinary, but we are focused on resolving them using all possible resources. And of course, we hope for better environment, for improved environmental condition due to our shared effort. Thank you once again, Oleg Stanislavovich. And now we are moving on to the research part of our session. As unfortunately, the Arctic Ocean and the Arctic Council is not part of our agenda. However, the 10th anniversary of the UN Ocean Science and Russian research contribution into this field will be briefed to us, but Mr. Shapovalov. So we can see you, Sergei Mikhailovich, and please speak up. Good morning, dear colleagues. We can hear you perfectly well.
Спасибо. Разрешите я представлю
My presentation.
к своему докладу. Доклад называется
It is titled 10 years, UN 10 years of ocean science, Russian input. Well, when it comes a decade, it is not exactly correct. The 10 years of the UN on ocean science for the benefit of sustainable development. That's the full name. The objectives, the goals for the decade were approved at the end of 2020 at the UN General Assembly session, and we started the major project in 2001.
фактически десятилетие.
Actually, the decade of ocean science is dedicated not to science itself. It's rather dedicated to the transfiguration of the science. Transfiguration meaning study of the condition of the global ocean. And we should find recommendations for preservation of the ocean and for saving it from degrading. Thus, the main motto of the decade, you see it here, the science we need for the ocean we want, or research that we need for the ocean we want. On this slide, you see the main description, say the structure of that describes this decade. Many of you might have seen it and might be already familiar with this decade announced by the UN. I just want to remind that the program of the decade includes the following. We should resolve the common problems of the decade, that is getting knowledge necessary for sustainable development, accumulation of sufficient knowledge, and expansion of the scale of usage of scientific knowledge about the ocean. These are very general tasks. They're always topical, and they're included in this decade as general ones. But to be able to do this and to really get the ocean we need, about that you see in the right part of the slide the description of the ocean we need. These are the expected results of the decade that were pronounced by the Intergovernmental Committee on Oceanography. They participated in the development of the plan of this decade. So they expect 7 results. They're also pretty general, but they're important for mankind. So to achieve these results, there are 10 priority tasks, and these tasks are aimed at resolving of different improvement of the different areas of knowledge about the ocean, scientific knowledge about the ocean. Each of the tasks is subdivided into several subtasks, since they are rather general. And at the bottom, you can see it says how this decade is going to be organized. Those will be programs, projects, activities, and providing support where it's necessary. You see on this slide those tasks of decade. I will not enlist them, not to overuse your time. Everyone who is interested may find these materials both on the site of the decade. You may also come to us, to the National Committee of this decade. There are many other methods as well. They're in public domain. They're in the plan for carrying out of this decade. It's published in 4 languages of the United Nations. In 4 languages used by the Intergovernmental Oceanography Committee of UNESCO for communication. Activity within this decade, it's supported by the programs, projects, activities, and providing of support. Programs are big projects, actually. They may be global or regional, and they are aimed at resolving of one or several priority tasks of the decade from those 10. Projects are more detailed, focused activities, and they're usually part of the decade programs. They contribute to the programs. Activities are single independent events like conferences, seminars, etc., that support the program or the project or directly help resolve this or that problem or priority task, carry out priority task. Providing support on the basis of the resolution of the General Assembly of the UN, this decade has to be carried out within the resources assigned for it. There won't be a special assigned financing for this decade. That is why the support shall be done by drafting finances from the interesting parties. At present,
существует 79
there are already 79 such inputs from the interested parties or stakeholders, both tangible and intangible.
Каким образом
How are they planning
десятилетия?
to do all that?
Каждые полгода
Each 6 months,
действием
there'll be an announcement, a call to action within the decade, and these calls are aimed at carrying out of certain tasks. There already took place the 4 calls to action. The first one was rather general, and the next ones depended on the programs that have been formed on the basis of the received applications.
Они наполнялись различными проектами.
So different projects were included. Sorry for technical inconvenience. Sergey, you have 1 minute left.
Так, у меня куда-то пропало изображение, но ничего.
Sorry, lost the image. Sergey, we see your screen. Russian projects are on the screen. You have 2 minutes left. I'll do my best to be on time. Within the calls to action, the results of the third call have already been summarized. 47 programs were adopted, over 200 projects, and 79 investments within the decade in different countries over the world. Around the world, over 460 activities of different kind were carried out. On this slide, you see Russian projects, which are part of that UN decade. They were announced and adopted upon the first call of actions. Russian projects were aimed at resolving of tasks in the interests of Russia, and they're about practically all our oceans and seas, that border Russia. There is also a project related to eutrophication of the Baltic Sea, which is man-caused. There will be a presentation about that project at the conference. As far as I know, you'll be able to hear about it. Russian activities within the decade program. It's included in the program. 2 conferences were included. One is in Kaliningrad for preservation of marine heritage, the Museum of the Ocean in the year 21. And also in the year 22, there was the All Russia Conference in Moscow. Russia and the UN Decade of Ocean Sciences. Conferences do take place, but the organizers don't yet register it, though they understand that the topics are suitable. In Russia, the functions of National Committee on a Decade with the Interdepartmental National Oceanography Committee and on the order of the Marine Collegium at the government of the Russian Federation. At the interdepartmental level, they have been developed the goals and main fields of activities of the Russian Federation in with regard to the UN Decade. They were regarded at the Scientific Expert Council of the Marine Collegium, and later they were adopted at the Interdepartmental Oceanography Committee meeting.
Значит, здесь
Here
четыре цели.
you get the list of the 4 goals or objectives. I will not read them aloud due to the shortage of time, but the wording was made according to the tasks and expected results of the UN Decade, but with consideration of Russian interests, priorities, and tasks in the area of marine activity.
Ну и основные
Well, the basic fields
сформулированы для достижения этих целей.
the basic things necessary for achievement of the pronounced objectives. There's also quite a number of them. I will not explain them in detail. They're enlisted in several slides of mine. If you're interested or perhaps want to participate, I believe the participation in the decade shall be promoted actively at different levels. So I hope that our scholars and everyone interested in preservation of the environmental system of the global ocean, those interested in making the ocean useful for the mankind and the population of Russia, I believe all these people may participate in this work. That's it with my presentation. Thank you very much, Sergey. Really, you've mentioned a lot of interesting things, and this decade became more understandable. Now it's clearer what is done in Russia.
В интересах устойчивого развития. Об этом, кстати, десятилетие.
For this decade, this UN decade was mentioned by Olga Bakhmet when she explained BRICS countries' activities, and I believe Oceanography Institute, named after Shishov of the Academy of Sciences of Russia, has familiarized us well with this decade and the activities related to it. If you only had superficial knowledge, now you know about it in more detail, and I believe many will react to a call to join the activities of this decade in Russia. Thank you very much, Sergey. Now, let's get back, or let's get to different activity related environment. These are specially protected water areas. Olga Klever will tell us about it. She is the Deputy Director of Rosa Center of the Ministry of Nature of Russia. Rosa Center is the Center for Nature Reserves. Dear forum participants, I'm from the Info-Analytical Analytical Center for the support of reserves of the Ministry of Nature of Russia. Let me tell you what was done in this field by the ministry. It has already been mentioned that Russia is huge, very diverse. Its area is over 17 million square kilometers. Its water boundary is very long, and all these factors impact the fact that we have huge biodiversity in Russia. Russia is surrounded by 12 seas that come from the related to 3 oceans, and one is the inner Caspian Sea. These water areas have different biodiversities. One of the most important missions of the marine protected areas, or MPAs, is the preservation of the sites that are not impacted by humans that much, and biodiversity is at the lowest danger. So we have those marine protected areas, and they're very good for protection against man-made hazards like stomach fishing, destruction of bottom and shore habitats, purification and contamination of water areas, recreation of humans that scare away the fauna representatives, and the development of the coastal territories. So such MPAs are probably the only tool for protection of rare and extinct or nearly extinct representatives of flora and fauna. According to Russian legislation, the MPAs in the federal, they are subject to the federal legislation. That is why there's a federal law. Historically, the system of MPAs was aimed at on-land biodiversity preservation. However, water areas were included since quite a long period of time. A number of places may be called to the first MPAs. Marine one, in the year 1978, there was created the Far East National Reserve in the Bay of Peter the Great of the Japanese Sea. That's the first place in Russia where the water area is bigger than the land area, 64 hectares and 63,000 hectares, for you to compare. The second was the Commodore State Reserve.
The entire shelf is used, and the underwater slope. The territory is above 3.6 million hectares. That's the area, and the water aquatory is 6.3 million hectares. That's the biggest MPA in the region. So the total area of MPAs is over 20 million hectares. This is roughly 2.4% of the entire territorial waters of the exclusive economic zone of the Russian Federation. Fortunately, we yet do not have the specially protected marine territories, but in fact, we do have achievements. In total, 49 coastal and marine MPAs are in Russia, 24 reserved territories, national parks, reserved areas, 2 natural monuments, and 1 botanic garden, Nikitsky Botanic Garden. Maritime water body is part of 23 specially protected, 33. Some territories have vast territories. Russian Arctic National Park has the water body associated with it over 6.5 million hectares. Novosibirsky Island has only 5 million hectares. National Park the Commodore Island, has almost 3.5 million hectares, and the Wrangel Island almost 1.5 million hectares. The Big and Taimursky reserved areas 1 million hectares each. Starting from 2001, setting up maritime and coastal specially protected areas goes on. In 2011, the most high latitude Russian Arctic National Park was launched at the Franz Josef Land. In addition to coastal rocks, it includes a 12-mile maritime water body. So then you have, in 2013, National Park Berengia was launched. The total area of 2.5 million hectares. National Park Pomorye, Onezhskaya Pomorye, it includes the delta of Onega River and the White Sea. 21,000 hectares, that's the sea equatory. Shantarsky Islands area is 500,000 hectares. Half of it, it's water. They have registered 11 species of whales and other species. Shantarsky Island has its main feature is the nursery of Greenland whales. 2017, the east of Gulf of Finland was set up at Leningrad region. 13,000 hectares, that's just water area. 2018, Novosibirsky Island reserved area was set up at Sakha Republic, 6.5 million hectares. In total, it's about 7 million. 5 million of them, it's water, it's sea. In 2018, this Russian protected status was given to the Crimea Republic reserved areas, Kazantipsky and Apupsky, Yaltinsky, Kazantipsky, and Swan Islands. Kazantipsky Reserve, as well as Apupsky, included water sea body. 2019, Kitalik National Park was set up at Sakar, about 800,000 hectares, water aquifer. National Park Samursky is launched in 2019. Bear Islands at Sakar, that's a very interesting natural reserve area. About 500,000 hectares is for water maritime area. And this park assures the protection of a very rare, unique white bear, polar bear, that is the Arctic symbol. 2021 is the year when the state natural reserved area Kazantip Maritime Reserve Area was set up. As it is evident, specially reserved, specially protected areas are huge in space. Having these great areas allows to preserve the biosynosis that is unique and protect species, national phenomena of great importance. We keep the water lines as part of Komandorsky National Park. And unique ecosystems are preserved at all these national protected areas and species. For talking about biodiversity and species that are part of the so-called preservation book, the Red Book, the role is immense. Just some figures. The number of species of biota kept and preserved at the specially protected areas. All these territories run research at their sites and monitoring. The data is used for state cadastre, at making pages into the preserved species book, the Red Book, and for other events. As part of the National Environmental Project, the Ministry of Natural Resources keeps the projects for developed biodiversity and development of environmental tourism. So we talk about species like populations of gray and Greenland whales at Okhtomorsk and the polar bear. The research expedition was complete, the first one last year. So we calculated the number of polar bears at Wrangel Island, 864 bears. It's 1/3 of the entire Alaska-Chukotka population, Chukotsky population. This is the first true figures on the polar bear population. Therefore, especially protected areas are quite important. And today, the geopolitical situation is tough, but Russia keeps its position on in international activities for preserving biodiversity. So we stand by our obligation on different, and we honor our obligations in different conventions. And Russia is part of the Biodiversity Convention, and parties adopted the Kunminsk-Montreal Global Framework Program on Biodiversity. By 2030, 30% of land and 30% of water must be protected. That's the goal. And to achieve the goals, to honor our obligations, of course, we must start developing the biodiversity protection strategy in the Russian Federation and focus our activities on developing the system of MAPs and other protected areas, meaning that the list must include not only strictly protected but other types of protected areas. For example, fishery areas that now substitute the areas where marine mammals are protected. If we follow along this line, Russia will become a leader in achieving targets for the global framework, but also will be a leader in the entire process of biodiversity protection and preservation. Thank you. Thank you very much, Olga Nikolaevna. Colleagues, our speaker deserves each of our speakers deserves a solo roundtable as part of the forum agenda. So information is plentiful, and we try to make very dense speeches, which is not exactly the best strategy. It means that we must make more effort to consider all the details in our activities. I would like to support Olga when she mentioned the Kunming-Montreal Framework Convention adopted in December 2022. It was a result of several years of intensive work, where Russia was an active participant when this framework was developed. It has 4 goals, 23 tasks, and one task is to develop a strategy for biodiversity protection action plan, and Russia is part of this convention on biodiversity. Has this immense challenge to set up a system of MPAs. Russia feels it's important, and it's not exactly a novelty when it comes to that type of activities. It is not an addition, but we must do it in a comprehensive way and have this system of protected areas. But protected areas were set up 100 years ago at Russia, but at land. With this, I would like to thank all discussion participants, everyone who helped me to run this plenary session on sustainable maritime areas management. And with this, I'm giving the floor to my co-moderator, Ivan Serebritsky, to continue our work. Thank you to all the panelists and for the organizers of the plenary session. Thank you. Thank you, Natalia Borisovna. Colleagues, our session hasn't ended. We have two pleasant things to do, and it is our tradition since 2015. It's part of our agenda at the Baltic Sea Day. We would like to give the Vernadsky Order, the order named after Vernadsky, for the great contribution into the development of the Baltic Sea. This is a non-governmental foundation named after Vernadsky, and I ask Olga Verlein to come up the stage. She is the general director for that non-governmental foundation. On behalf of the foundation, I congratulate you on the World Water Resource Day. I remember verses written by Bloch, where he reminiscence on how changed is the coastal area. Now people drink lemonade. We can smell fumes of gasoline at the shore. So it was written, the verse was written 100 years ago, but the challenges are still there. They became more global, though. The Baltic Sea is shared by all of us, and it must be a platform to unify, not to divide us. Therefore, we must ensure that what resources they must develop country's economy, but without depleting natural resources. Everyone understands that only together for the sustainable development we shall work and we will bear the sustainable fruit. So, as you know, we named this foundation after Vernadsky, who was a great scientist, thinker, and academician. We are celebrating his 160th anniversary. He wrote about biosphere and noosphere, and he pointed out the growing anthropogenic load and said that we must commiserate our impact with the natural potential. Therefore, we shall consider how actions impact noosphere and prevent damaging this environment, but rather reward the humanity. So, with this order, we would like to decorate those scientists and practitioners who made the input into the sustainable development of our country. I would like to announce the first person is Ryabchuk Daria. She represents the All Russia Institute for Geoscience, named after Karpinsky. Artyom Pavlovsky, head of the department in city argumentation and urban planning at the Master Plan Department of St. Petersburg. Tatiana Yeremina, Director of Hydrology and Oceanology Institute of Russian Hydrological University. Thank you. Thank you, Olga Vladimirovna. Colleagues, 2 announcements. Kind of housekeeping announcements. For the first time this year, we offer to produce a joint resolution both for the Baltic Sea Day and the ecology of a big city, because we have a common theme for water and everything that is related to water. The draft resolution is already published on our website at the Congress Program section. So please review it and provide to the steering committee your proposals by the end of tomorrow. Next. We received many requests, and the steering committee decided to publish the collection of works for the participants of this forum. Please, when it comes to dates, consult directly with the steering committee. It will not be printed, but most likely it will be in the soft electronic format, and we will provide later the dates when your summaries are to be submitted. This plenary session is over, so roundtables start at 1:30 in the afternoon. At 13:30,